Most people think this is just spare change. But collectors know the truth. Some versions of this coin have become so rare that they turn ordinary people into overnight surprises. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because what looks like a simple, everyday penny from 1986 in the United Kingdom might actually be hiding a secret that most people walk past without ever noticing. A coin so ordinary in appearance that millions of people have held it in their hands, spent it without a second thought, or left it forgotten in jars and drawers. Yet in rare cases, this exact coin has been linked to staggering collector demand, unexpected auction battles, and prices that can shock even experienced numismatists. And if you truly have one of the rare variations, you could be sitting on something that has been reported in collector circles and private sales discussions to reach values as high as $80,000. Yes, a single penny. A coin that once bought nothing more than a piece of candy in its time, now whispered about as a hidden treasure. But before you rush to check your pockets, you need to understand something very important. Not every 1986 penny is valuable. In fact, most of them are still only worth face value. The real story lies deeper, in the details that separate an ordinary coin from an extraordinary one. And that is exactly where this journey begins. The United Kingdom penny in 1986 was part of the long-running decimal coinage system introduced in 1971, designed to simplify British currency. By the mid-1980s, the penny was still widely used in daily transactions, even though inflation was slowly reducing its purchasing power. People would use it for parking meters, small sweets, or simply throw it into change jars at home without a second thought. But what most people didn't realize at the time was that certain years, certain minting batches, and certain subtle errors could turn a normal circulation coin into a collector's dream decades later. The 1986 penny is one of those coins that sits in a mysterious category. Not widely known as rare at first glance, but still carefully studied by collectors who understand that value often hides in the smallest imperfections. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because what you are about to learn could completely change the way you look at everyday pocket change forever. The 1986 UK penny features the iconic portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse side. At that time, the design used was the third portrait by Raphael Maklauf, introduced in 1985. This portrait shows the Queen wearing the girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, giving a more mature and refined appearance compared to earlier versions. Around the portrait, you will find the inscription identifying her as Queen of the United Kingdom and other realms, a standard feature of British coinage. On the reverse side, the penny carries the elegant image of a crowned portcullis with chains, a symbol associated with the Palace of Westminster. This design has long been used on British pennies and represents authority, tradition, and national identity. To most people, it looks like just another small copper coin, but collectors see something very different. They see potential. They see rarity. They see history hidden in metal. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. But only if your coin carries one of the rare traits that elevate it beyond millions of others minted in the same year. One of the most important factors in determining value is condition. Coins that remain in uncirculated or mint state condition can already attract attention from collectors. A penny that has never been used in circulation, with sharp details and original luster, can be significantly more desirable than one that has been worn down through years of use. But condition alone is not the full story. Collectors also search for minting anomalies. These can include misaligned strikes, off-center designs, unusual doubling in the lettering or numbers, or even variations in the metal composition. While the 1986 penny was produced in massive quantities, the reality of coin production is that mistakes happen. And when mistakes escape into circulation, they can become incredibly valuable over time. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because the difference between a normal penny and a rare error coin is often invisible to the untrained eye. It may look identical at first glance. It may feel identical in your hand. But under magnification, under expert inspection, secrets begin to appear. Now imagine this. A coin that was once worth 1 penny, sitting unnoticed for decades, suddenly appearing at an auction where collectors recognize something unusual about it. The room becomes silent. Bidding begins slowly, then faster, then aggressive, Because when rarity meets demand, prices stop behaving logically. This is where stories of extraordinary valuations begin to surface. In collector markets, rare British-era pennies from similar eras have occasionally been discussed or privately sold for surprising amounts when multiple rare factors align. And in that context, the 1986 penny becomes part of a larger conversation about hidden value in modern coinage. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because most people never even consider that something so small could carry such a financial surprise. But let's go deeper into what makes collectors obsessed with coins like this. Numismatics, the study and collection of coins, is not just about money. It is about history, scarcity, and storytelling. Every coin is a snapshot of a moment in time. The 1986 penny reflects Britain in the mid-80s, a country balancing tradition with modernization, still relying on physical currency in everyday life, and producing coins in massive numbers to support daily commerce. Yet within that mass production lies the unpredictable nature of human error and mechanical variation. Even the most controlled minting processes cannot eliminate every deviation. That is why collectors constantly search through old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten boxes, because sometimes the smallest detail can mean the biggest difference. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because the odds of finding a truly rare variant in circulation today are extremely low, yet not impossible. Now think about how many of these pennies were minted in 1986. Millions upon millions entered circulation. Most are still floating around in collections, drawers, or even still occasionally appearing in change. But only a tiny fraction may carry features that elevate them into high-value territory. This is why experienced collectors never dismiss common coins. They examine everything. They inspect edges, weight, surface texture, and even microscopic details that most people would never notice. Because history has proven again and again that valuable coins often hide in plain sight. And this is exactly where the story becomes even more fascinating. Because the true excitement around coins like this is not just about confirmed rarity, but about discovery. Every year, new collectors find previously overlooked coins. Every year, coins once considered ordinary are re-evaluated under modern grading systems. And every year, stories emerge of coins turning up in unexpected places and achieving astonishing results when verified. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because you are now part of that same possibility. A possibility that your penny is not just a penny, but something far more significant waiting to be identified. And this is only the beginning of the story, because in the next part we will go deeper into the most valuable error types ever found on British pennies, how professional grading can completely change a coin's value overnight, and the exact signs that collectors look for when they are hunting for coins that could reach life-changing prices, including the rare cases where figures like $80,000 are discussed in high-level collector markets. And if you are holding this coin right now, you might want to pay very close attention, because what comes next could determine whether your penny stays worth one, or becomes something far greater. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because what looks like a simple 1990 United States 1-cent penny might actually be hiding a story that most people completely ignore every single day. A coin so common that billions were made, passed from hand to hand, used in vending machines, dropped on streets, thrown into jars, and forgotten in drawers. Yet within this ordinary copper-colored piece of metal, collectors sometimes discover something far more interesting than its face value suggests. The 1991 cent penny from the United States is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most famous coin designs in American history. It features President Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been used since 1909. That alone already makes it historically important. Every time you hold one of these coins, you are holding a small piece of American history that has been in circulation for over a century of design tradition. On the obverse side, you see Abraham Lincoln's portrait along with the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the year 1990. This design is deeply symbolic because Lincoln represents unity, freedom, and one of the most transformative eras in American history. For many collectors, even a normal penny is a reminder of how powerful a simple coin can be when it carries national identity. On the reverse side, in 1990, The penny still carried the Lincoln Memorial design, showing the famous monument with the statue of Lincoln visible inside. This design was used from 1959 until 2008, making it one of the longest-running reverse designs in U.S. coin history. If you look closely, you can even see tiny details like the steps of the memorial and the word 1 cent boldly displayed at the bottom. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. But only if you understand what makes certain versions of it special, because most 1990 pennies are still only worth 1 cent. However, the world of coin collecting is not about what is common. It is about what is rare, unusual, or imperfect in just the right way. The 1990 penny was minted in massive numbers by the United States Mint, with coins produced in different mint facilities, mainly Philadelphia and Denver. These mint marks, or sometimes the absence of a mint mark, can already create subtle differences that collectors pay attention to. Coins from Philadelphia typically have no mint mark, while Denver coins carry a small D under the date. At first glance, this might not seem important at all. But in the world of numismatics, even a small letter can change the identity of a coin and its collector demand. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because some 1990 pennies become valuable not because they are rare in quantity, but because they are rare in condition or error type. One of the most important factors that can increase value is condition. A penny that has never circulated, known as mint state, can look dramatically different from one that has been used in everyday transactions. The original shine, sharp details, and clean surfaces all matter. Coins are graded on a professional scale, and even a small difference in grade can significantly change how collectors perceive value. But condition is only the beginning. The real excitement begins when we talk about minting errors. Errors happen when something goes slightly wrong during production. Even in highly controlled facilities, coins can come out with small mistakes. These mistakes can include double strikes, off-center images, unusual surface markings, or slight variations in metal flow. A 1990 penny with a strong error can attract attention from collectors who specialize in modern U.S. coinage. Some errors are subtle, only visible under magnification, while others are obvious even without tools. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because you might unknowingly have a coin that looks normal but carries a hidden anomaly that makes it far more desirable than the average cent. Another important aspect is the copper composition and surface tone. In 1990, pennies were primarily made of zinc with a thin copper coating. This means that over time, environmental conditions can cause color changes, spotting, or unique toning patterns. While many of these changes reduce value, some unusual natural toning patterns can actually increase collector interest if they are visually striking and original. Collectors also pay attention to strike quality. A strong strike means the design is sharply defined, while a weak strike might show fading details. Strongly struck coins are generally more desirable because they represent better mint production quality. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because most people never take the time to look at their pennies closely enough to notice these differences. To most, it is just spare change. To collectors, it is a field full of hidden possibilities. Now imagine a scenario where someone discovers a 1990 penny with a rare combination of traits: a high-grade condition, a noticeable minting error, and excellent eye appeal. That coin does not stay ordinary for long. It becomes the kind of coin that gets submitted for grading, verified, and discussed among collectors who understand its uniqueness. This is where the world of auctions and private sales becomes important. Rare coins often move through specialized markets where collectors compete for ownership. And when demand meets rarity, prices can rise far beyond expectations. While most 1990 pennies remain worth face value, exceptional examples with rare characteristics have been known to attract strong collector premiums, sometimes reaching hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the specific error, condition, and demand at the time of sale. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because you are now aware that something so small and ordinary might actually deserve a second look. The interesting part about coins like this is that they teach a simple but powerful lesson. Value is not always obvious. Sometimes it is hidden in plain sight. Sometimes it requires knowledge, patience, and attention to detail to recognize what others overlook. Millions of 1990 pennies still exist today. They are in circulation, in collections, in storage boxes, and in forgotten containers all across the country. But only a tiny fraction will ever be examined closely enough to reveal anything unusual. And that is exactly why collectors continue searching. Because every once in a while, an ordinary penny becomes something extraordinary. So if you have this coin sitting in your hands right now, take a moment before you dismiss it. Look closely at the date. Check the mint mark. Observe the condition. Pay attention to the details that most people ignore. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because the difference between 1 cent and something far more valuable is often not what the coin is, but what you know about it. And in the world of coin collecting, knowledge is the real treasure. And now we reach the end of this story. But before you go, I want you to remember something very important. Most people go through their entire lives without ever realizing that the smallest objects in their hands can sometimes carry the biggest surprises. A simple 1991-cent penny, something you might see every day without a second thought, can suddenly become something worth far more than its face value when the right details come together. Condition, rarity, minting errors, and even tiny variations that most people never notice. All of these factors can completely change the story of a coin. If you checked your coins while watching this, you are already ahead of millions of people who never take the time to look. Because in the world of coin collecting, the real discoveries don't happen in museums or auction halls. They happen in pockets, jars, old boxes, and forgotten drawers. And that is what makes this so fascinating. Every coin tells a story, but only a few coins tell a valuable one. So before you put your change away, take one last look. You never know what might be hiding in plain sight. And if you ever find something unusual, something different, something that feels a little out of the ordinary, that is exactly where curiosity begins. Because sometimes, the smallest penny can lead to the biggest surprise. And maybe, just maybe, the next rare discovery is already in your hands. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because the 1958 wheat penny from the United States is not just another old coin, it is actually the final chapter of one of the most iconic designs in American numismatic history. A small copper cent that marked the end of an era, and the beginning of a new collecting obsession that continues even today. At first glance, it looks simple. A worn or shiny penny with Abraham Lincoln on the front and 2 wheat stalks on the back. Nothing unusual, nothing flashy, nothing that would make most people stop and think twice. But that is exactly where the story becomes interesting. Because simplicity is often where history hides its most meaningful details. The 1958 wheat penny was produced by the United States Mint during a time when America was transitioning between 2 eras of coin design. This coin represents the very last year of the wheat cent series, which had been running since 1909. After 1958, the reverse design changed to the Lincoln Memorial, making this penny the final piece of a 49-year design legacy. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because you are holding the closing chapter of a design that defined generations of American pocket change. The front of the coin features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, one of the most respected presidents in United States history. Above his head is the phrase "In God We Trust." To the left is the word liberty, and to the right is the year 1958. This design has remained one of the most recognizable images in American currency, symbolizing leadership, freedom, and unity. But the real beauty of this coin is found on the reverse side. 2 elegant wheat stalks curve along the edges, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This simple design is what gave the coin its nickname, the wheat penny. For nearly 5 decades, this design circulated through wars, economic changes, and generations of Americans, passing through countless hands. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world. Because most of these pennies were used heavily in circulation and eventually lost, damaged, or melted down over time. The 1958 wheat penny was produced in large quantities, especially from Philadelphia and Denver mints. The Denver version carries a small D mint mark under the date, while the Philadelphia coins have no mint mark. At first, this might seem like a minor detail, but collectors know that even small differences like this help identify production origin and can affect desirability. Even though millions were minted, not all coins survive in high-quality condition today. Many were spent in daily life when they were still just normal money, used for groceries, parking meters, and small purchases. Over time, most became heavily worn, making high-grade examples far more interesting to collectors. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because condition is one of the most important factors in determining its modern value. A typical circulated 1958 wheat penny is still only worth a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition. However, when you find one in uncirculated or mint-state condition, especially with strong details and original luster, it becomes significantly more desirable. Collectors actively search for well-preserved examples because they represent what the coin looked like when it first left the mint decades ago. But condition is only part of the story. The real excitement begins when you consider rarity factors that are not obvious at first glance. While the 1958 penny is not rare in production numbers, certain variations, striking errors, or exceptionally high-grade certified coins can attract serious collector interest. These are the kinds of coins that get professionally evaluated, graded, and stored carefully in protective cases. Some collectors specifically hunt for wheat pennies from the final years of production because they represent a historical endpoint. The wheat design ended in 1958, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959. That transition alone gives this coin a special place in numismatic history. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because you are holding the last year of a design that had already become a symbol of American life. Think about how many of these coins once existed. Billions of wheat pennies were minted over the decades, but only a fraction remain in collectible condition today. Many were lost in circulation, while others were melted down or simply worn beyond recognition. That means every surviving example carries a small piece of preserved history. Collectors often talk about eye appeal, which refers to how visually attractive a coin is. Even two coins with the same grade can have very different appeal depending on toning, shine, and surface quality. A beautifully preserved 1958 wheat penny with rich copper color can stand out dramatically compared to a dull or heavily circulated one. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because what looks like a simple penny could actually be part of a carefully preserved historical record. Now imagine this coin being discovered in an old collection, maybe inside a forgotten album or a box inherited from a family member. At first, it seems ordinary, but under closer inspection, it reveals sharp details, original luster, and possibly even unusual characteristics that make it stand out. That is the moment collectors pay attention. Coins like this are often submitted for professional grading, where experts evaluate authenticity, condition, and quality. Once graded, they are placed into protective holders that preserve their state and allow collectors to trade them with confidence. While most 1958 wheat pennies remain affordable, exceptional examples in top condition can attract strong demand from serious collectors. And in rare cases where coins are nearly perfect or unusually preserved, they can reach surprisingly high premiums in specialized markets. If you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in the world, because you now understand that its value is not just about money, but about history, preservation, and timing. The wheat penny series is one of the most collected coin series in the world, not because every coin is rare, but because each coin represents a different moment in time. The 1958 issue stands at the very end of that timeline, making it especially meaningful for collectors who try to complete full sets. And that is why even today, decades later, people still search through old coins, hoping to find hidden gems in plain sight. Because every once in a while, something as simple as a penny turns out to be much more than it appears. So if you have this coin in your possession, take a closer look. Appreciate its design, recognize its history, and understand that even the smallest objects can carry the longest stories. The 1958 wheat penny is more than just a piece of copper. It is the final moment of a long American coinage era, a design that quietly lived in people's pockets for nearly half a century and then suddenly disappeared from everyday life. Most people spent it without a second thought. Others stored it away without realizing they were holding the last year of something historic. And that is the real lesson here. Sometimes value is not obvious. Sometimes history hides in the smallest details. And sometimes the things we ignore the most are the ones that carry the deepest meaning years later. So before you forget about your coins or leave them sitting in a drawer, take a moment to look a little closer. Check the dates. Notice the condition. Pay attention to the small things most people overlook. Because every coin has a story, but only a few are remembered. And who knows, the next time you check your pocket change, you might not just find a penny. You might find a piece of history waiting to be discovered.